Hello everybody, my name is Lauren, and this is the second video for all of the TI-84 plus CE calculator tutorials. So today we are going to be talking about scatter plots, and this is going to be sort of geared towards pre-calculus students because this is one of the first things we covered in the year. So let's get started. So again, today we are going to be talking about scatter plots on the TI-84 plus CE, and if you watched the one I made earlier, we talked about parabolas, so these two videos are not going to be connected in any sort of way, unless you happen to do a quadratic sort of scatter plot, which I don't believe we're doing today. So I'm also going to use a lot of examples from my textbook. So this is Pre-Calculus with Limits. It's our school textbook. It has a lot of great examples that we have done in class, so I'll be pulling out of that. And I believe I have only 2 examples for today. And I also found this really cool background, so instead of looking at my room, you get to look at space. So let me go ahead and show you the calculator. So again, we are using the TI-84 plus CE. You can see here, this is from Texas Instruments, and there are other models of the TI-84 that have similar keystrokes. However, it might be best to have a plus CE to compare your calculator with mine. So I'll be using this diagram again to show you exactly what keys to press, so that way you can get a sense of where your calculator is. And I will also be sharing with you a program designed from Texas Instruments called TI Connect CE, and this is a great way to show you exactly what's on my calculator screen so you can get a better sense of what exactly is going on. So being that I am not that great at making up data, I decided to use some examples from my textbook. So let's go to the very first one. So our first example is here, and you can see there that we have our data set. And let me just go to this in my textbook real quick. Alright. So we have our data here. You can see our x values and our y values right here. So this problem is talking about number of stores, and we are simply asked to sketch a scatter plot of the data using our calculators, and it's actually from Walmart. So the table shows the number y of Walmart stores for each year x from 1996 through 2003. So these are actually going to be individual data points or coordinates on our scatter plot. So in order to input this data, I am going to show you my screen. And so currently my screen is just blank. It's a good place to start. If you had stuff on your screen, do not worry, you do not need to clear it. I just prefer to do that just to keep my work nice and tidy. So the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be using this button that says Stat a lot today. Let me show you where that button is real quick. Just as a heads up, wrong thing. Just as a heads up, this video may be a little bit lengthy because there's a lot to cover and the examples do take a little bit while to type into your calculator, sort of things like that. So the main button that we're going to be using today is, that's not right, sorry about that, is this Stat button right here. It's right underneath the delete key, which you probably use very often. So that gives us a lot of options once we go there. So we are going to go there and I'll show you what that looks like on my calculator. So if I hit that Stat button, I get a screen that looks like this. And a great place to start is at your edit screen. So I'm going to go ahead and click this number 1 that says edit, and you should get a screen that looks like this. So I already have previous numbers from another graph in there. However, it's perfectly fine if you don't. I'm going to actually clear those by clearing my list. Give me 1 second. So again, my lists are now cleared. So the L stands for list. It's kind of common sense. However, it's just always a good idea to refresh yourself on that. So we're going to go back to this example here that I had from my textbook. And simply what we're going to do is in the first list, you're going to input these years. You only put 1 year in 1 column, so you're going to work down. And then in list 2, you're going to be placing the number of stores. Again, going down the column and not across. So take a look at that, and while you are doing that, I'm going to put those numbers in my calculator as well. And I will show you what those look like once I'm done typing this in. It's kind of a tedious thing, but as you keep on doing these, you do get quicker at knowing exactly what keys to press and reading numbers quickly. You just have to make sure you don't skip over things. That's the hardest part. So I always do a double check once I'm done typing in everything, and I suggest that you do that as well. So it looks like I am good. Let me go ahead and show you what this will look like. So currently, once I typed in all those numbers from that example, I had a screen that looks like this. And you should have a dotted line here because we have no other data to input. So that's perfectly fine. So the next thing I'm going to do is just hit second mode. That'll take us back to the regular home screen. Again, mine's blank. Yours does not have to be. So that's just a good way to make sure that we don't touch the list anymore and that we don't edit it anymore. So the next thing we're going to be doing is turning on our stat plot. And so if you have anything in your y equals, I suggest clearing it. That will confuse you probably. And you can notice that my stat plot is already turned on here. However, I will show you how to turn it off and turn it back on again. So there's 2 options that you can do, and one option is a little bit more technical and complicated, and the other option is simplified. So the first option is to actually click the up arrow when you're on this screen, and you can select over what would be plot 1. My cursor is hovering over it here, and you would hit enter. It'll turn it on and off, so I just turned it off right now. I'm going to turn it back on, and you should come back to a screen that looks like this. That just lets you know that your stat plot is on. So when you go to graph this by hitting the graph button in the upper right hand corner of your calculator, it might look like this. And you're going to be confused. You're going to be like, why is there no points? And that's a really great question. So again, you're going to use your zoom. So there are many different options on the zoom button, which is in the middle of those white buttons at the top of your calculator. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the zoom, and you should get selections like this, and you're going to notice a selection that you think we probably should use, being that we're working with statistics and scatter plots, and that is simply can get my pen to work, this option right here. So zoom number 9, you can either type in the number 9 or you can scroll all the way down the list, whatever works for you. I simply like to type in the number, just easier for me. So we're going to do zoom stat. Once you do that, it'll adjust your screen so that you can actually see your points this time. So you can see that this example is a linear example. It's one of the first scatter plots that you'll be doing. It's a great way to get familiar with scatter plots, sorry. And another cool thing that you can do is actually find the line of best fit. So instead of doing this by hand, the calculator will actually calculate that for you. So if you do that, you can go to that stat option again by hitting the stat button on your calculator, and you can notice that there is another screen on here that simply says calc. So that'll run some calculations on the data that you inputted. Really helpful when trying to find out certain things. Of course, if you're in statistics, you're going to be using that a lot. However, I'm not in statistics, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. I'm just going to do the stuff that I personally know myself. So I'm going to scroll over to calc. You should get this huge long list of other options. And being that we're working with linear functions, we're going to choose number 4 here. You can see this is like the y equals mx plus b form. And so we're going to go ahead and select this number 4 option right here. It might be different on your calculator if you're using the older versions of TI-84s. However, just find the one that says linear reg. You can notice there are 2. We're going to choose the first one. So when I click on that, I come up with a screen that looks like this. So you can see that I have my 2 lists here. You can see that we're doing a linear reg, and the frequency list does not really matter at this point. However, the store equation is vitally important if you actually want to get an equation out of this. So we're going to go put our cursor down there. And, don't know why that did that. So what we're going to do is click on that store reg, and we're going to actually hit this vars button, and I'll show you what that looks like button wise on your calculator by going back to this picture. So you can see here that we have this button called vars, and that'll give you a lot of options. There's multiple screens that go along with that as well. And let me go back to my calculator to show you exactly what that'll give you. So once you do vars, you should get a screen with all these different options here. And we're not going to be concerned with any of these for today. We're simply going to be concerned with what is called y-vars. So you're going to be selecting this, moving your cursor over to the right, which should give you something that looks like this. And we are going to be worrying about the first option, which says function. So you're going to click number 1, function. And when you do this, it's going to give you an even longer list. And you can honestly select any one of these. I personally choose Y1 if there's nothing in it already. Just to make it easier for myself, so I'm going to go ahead and choose option number 1. And you should see that it inputted back into your store reg option Y1. So this simply tells you exactly where your equation is supposed to come up once they calculate it. So we're going to put our cursor over calculate, and we're ready to calculate. Everything's filled in, and we're going to go ahead and hit enter. You should get something that looks similar to this. Don't worry about writing any of these numbers down because we already stored this whole equation into our y1. So if we wanted to see that, of course you can press the y equals button, which will give you this. And you can see that all of this information that we got in the linear reg is here in our y1. So in order to see this on the graph, you simply just press graph. It's going to graph your equation that you found here, or simply the calculator calculated. And you should get something like this. So the purpose of a line best fit is to show you how variable your data is. So you can see that not all of these data points are exactly on this line, which is perfectly fine, but you can see that they're pretty close. And it allows you to also observe if you have any outliers or things like that. So that is example number 1 for linear. And if you're in pre-calculus, you probably are doing sine, cosine, so your trigonometry. So let's look at example number 2, which has to deal with this trigonometry. So this is going to be looking at a sine graph. And so again, same process, we're going to input our data. However, this time we have 2 places. We're going to use 4 lists. If you choose to, you can even do 3, it does not matter. And you can see that we wrote out the number corresponding with the month here, obviously because you cannot type in the name of the month into your calculator. That would confuse the calculator. And so we're simply not going to worry about this part A here. So you can ignore all of this. We're simply just going to worry about graphing it today. And that's the only purpose of this video. So let's go ahead and put that into our list. So again, you're going to go back to that stat button and that edit 1 option. And I'm going to input all these numbers as you do that as well. And this one might take a little bit longer depending if you're choosing to do 4 lists or 3. I'm going to choose to do 4 just to make it easier and consistent, and that way we do not have to do anything special. However, it's perfectly fine if you choose to do 3 lists. So oops. And if you have any typos, be sure to fix those before you move on. Otherwise, that will trip you up. So this is one of our questions that we had in our homework a while back. And this is regarding monthly normal temperatures in Fahrenheit for both New York City and Fairbanks, Alaska. So obviously you can see that there's a huge difference already, but we're going to analyze that further with a graph. Now let me show you what my lists look like now. So after typing in all that data, again, I did 4 lists. So you can see this is the data for New York City, and this is the data for Alaska. So you can see I repeated the month numbers, both for New York here, as well as Alaska here. If you chose to do this with only 3 lists, you would only have the months once, and you have the New York data here and the Alaska data here. And you would obviously have to change what lists are going to be part of your scatter plot, which is not something that we're going to be worrying about today. So that's the reason why I did 4. So next you're going to again go to your y equals screen. Make sure you clear this previous equation, otherwise it's going to screw you up. So make sure you clear that. So we're back there. Our plot 1 is turned on, and our plot 2 we are going to turn on as well. So you can see our plot 2 is turned on now. And just to make sure, you can always do second y equals, which is your stat plot option. So you can see that plot number 1 is going to be the data from your list 1 and list 2, and plot number 2 is going to be your data from list 3 and list 4. This is consistent with what we had over here. So list 1 and list 2 go together for New York, and list 3 and list 4 go together for Alaska. So that looks good. We're going to make sure that both of these are okay, and we're going to go ahead and graph. Again, nothing shows up because we have to do zoom stat, which is zoom number 9. So you should get something that looks like this, and you can see obviously there's 2 different colors, the blue being plot 1 and the red being plot 2. So the blue indicates New York and the red indicates Alaska. So next we're going to find our lines of best fit, and being that this is a sine function, we are going to be using a different thing. So again, we're going to go back to our stat by hitting the stat button, and we are going to go back to this calc option by moving our cursor over. You should get a screen that looks like this once again, and instead of clicking linear reg this time, we are going to scroll all the way down this list. Takes a little bit. If you know your numbers, it makes it way easier. And you should be at a screen where you can see sine reg down there. And this is the option that we're going to be choosing. So if you want, you could type in C, or you could go all the way down the list. It does not matter. But sine reg is very important. It is completely different from any of these other options. It'll give you a sine wave instead of a line. Otherwise, if you try to do another option, it won't really fit with your graph, which is not very helpful when you're trying to analyze your graph for certain things. So again, we're going to hit sine reg. You should come up with a screen that looks like this. So it looks a little bit different than what we had previously with the linear example. However, so we're going to do the sine reg for plot 1 first, dealing with New York. So again, don't worry about the period for now, don't worry about these iterations. We're only going to concern ourselves with the store reg. So we're going to scroll down there, and the only thing that we're going to concern ourselves with is doing the same process as before. So you're going to go back to that vars button, which is next to the program and clear button. Press that. Should be at the screen. Move your cursor over to yvars. Select one or function. And then choose y1. Honestly, it does not matter. However, when we do the next sine reg, it will matter. So I'm going to choose y1. It'll put that option here, and we're going to go ahead and hit enter on the calculate. You should get some crazy numbers that look somewhat like this. So again, don't worry about writing all these down because we already stored it in y1. We can check that by hitting the y equals, and you can see that this equation appears here. Now to do the same thing for the other scatter plot for Alaska, we're going to do the exact same process. So I'm not going to show you every step, however I'll show you when I get there. So follow the exact same process. Sine reg. Except this time, you're going to want to store it in y2. Otherwise, it will clear your y1, which we don't want because we spent all that time doing the other plot. And then hit calculate. And you should get some more crazy numbers that look like this. And check to make sure that it's in your y2 by hitting y equals. And you should get this. Now to see if that lines up with your graph, just hit the graph button again, and wait as it graphs. The sine ones are always a little bit slower just because it's more difficult, so you're gonna have to wait a little bit longer. And I believe something is not right because we get a screen that looks like this. So this red line should obviously be down here, and I believe I know the answer to that, and I wonder if any of you caught that. So we're actually going to clear our y2 and redo this. So if you notice what I did wrong, when I go to do that sine reg, I didn't change what lists I wanted. So when I go back here, you can see that we have the two list options, and if we're wanting to do the line of best fit for Alaska, that was list 3 and 4. So in order to get that option, you're going to press the second button and press, where's list 3? Press second 3, that'll give you list 3, and for list 4, it is second number 4. So I'll show you what that looks like here. So you can see how we changed them here, and I'll show you what buttons that corresponds to on your calculator. So again, what I simply did was hit the second button here, and then in order to get list 3, I press number 3. You can see right above it, it does say list 3. So again, second, list 3, and then I press second again for my y equals, and hit number 4, and right above it, it does say list 4, and that is how you change your lists. Let me go back here to my screen to show you. And you can see that happened here. Make sure to store this again by hitting vars, y vars, function, and we're going to put it in y2. And just hit calculate when you're there. Should get some different crazy numbers because we changed our list this time and didn't make the mistake like last time. And we're going to watch this graph for just a second as it takes its time graphing. Hopefully this works. If you do make that mistake like I just made, always go back and check which lists you had selected, because I have made that mistake many times, and my classmates have also made that mistake too. Alright, so this is what we get, which looks much better than this up here, being that we selected the right list this time. And you can see that this data actually fits the line of best fit very well. You can see almost all of them are on the line of best fit. And you can see that New York has higher temperatures than Alaska. It's pretty expected, being that Alaska is pretty cold. And that is pretty much it for scatter plots. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions regarding scatter plots, or you want me to cover another certain topic next, feel free to let me know in the comments. And if you have any recommendations, let me know. And if you or anyone else is struggling with this, be sure to share it with them. I will share it with my friends, and yeah, have a great day.